As we begin in earnest the affairs of 2009, we draw to the attention of all of the students of the Ascended Masters, and most especially those who are their pledged torchbearers, who have pledged themselves to the great cause of the Ascension, the great cause of freedom for all of the freedom-loving peoples far and wide across the face of the earth. Some of those considerations which are always upon the hearts and the minds of the Ascended Masters as they weigh in the balances side by side two considerations that factor into how it is that they are permitted and encouraged to engage in world affairs. These two considerations are first and foremost the divine inclination of the glorious, great, mighty presence, the I am that I am. For the Ascended Masters read the thoughts of God, the Creator, and there they are inspired with the vision of those thoughts as they relate to each of you individually, and indeed to every precious heart flame far and wide across the face of the earth. They behold in these divine thoughts such love and compassion, such a high exaltation and transcendent vision of that which is destined for each and every life stream, namely their very own ascended status as a co-creator with the great I am that I am, manifesting in all aspects of their nature the divine qualities of that Creator, of the Father, Mother, God, of the great givingness and perfection that is the nature of the one glorious presence. Side by side with this vision then which the Ascended Masters have, they must also weigh in the balances that which the outer self has insisted upon for its very own nature. Notice we say the outer self, that is to say the mortal self, that begins to be identified with the soul, with memory, identified with that which develops into a personality in each subsequent incarnation. Taken one by one, that is to say, one person at a time, this is a rather simple equation of balance. On the one hand, that which the glorious presence has envisioned in the blueprint of the electronic body of the mighty I am presence of that life stream. And on the other hand, what the soul has envisioned of its own nature thus far, that which it has externalized. This simple equation becomes a very intricate, complicated balancing act when that one equation must be multiplied millions and billions of times and evaluated in the aggregate of all of the life streams presently embodied in the earth. Requiring this balance does truly the inscrutable wisdom of a Solomon to choose how the future shall unfold. For you cannot separate out the destiny of the individual from the destiny of the collective of mankind, save you are dealing with an individual life stream, such as those who are the students of the light, who have themselves begun the delicate process of separating themselves out from the mass consciousness and plighting their troth with the ascended masters and that divine destiny, which does ultimately remove them from the karmic car of juggernaut of that which mankind en masse is decreeing for themselves. The ascended masters and their anointed representatives and their ascended master activities have defined the problems of life in a unique way. And they have established a high standard of accomplishment, one that has been long abandoned by most of the mankind of Earth and most of the mortal institutions of this earth. That goal is the veritable transformation of the nature of people intrinsically. Yes, literally, authentic and permanent change of the fabric of identity from one of mortality, from one of the common vicissitudes of human behavior patterns. The ascended masters affirm that it is within the capacity of each life stream to lift themselves up as if by their own bootstraps, thanks to the power of their own indwelling, mighty, perfect presence, and to change their human nature, exchanging it for a perfect and transcendent pattern of a divine nature. Now, this involves two aspects that are truly something that has long ago been abandoned by most of mankind. No one really tries to change the fundamental makeup of individual human beings. We grant you that this is a goal that is fraught with likely frustrations, requiring exquisite, long-standing patience to bring about a change in human nature. If you stop to evaluate most of the human institutions, that is to say governments, educational institutions, religious organizations, and their theologies, almost all of these begin with the premise that human beings are what they are who they are, and while you might be able to improve their surroundings and their environment, woe be unto anyone who tries to actually change and transform and elevate the character of individuals into something more. The religious foundations of most of the world's major religions actually go so far as to, in the affirmative, that is to say, they come right out and state emphatically that human beings were born as they are, will live and die as they are, and basically never change their nature for all eternity. So the idea of changing human nature never even arises. With this premise in mind, you are left with the alternative of trying to, as much as possible, change the furniture in the environment in which human beings find themselves, improve the human institutions, improve the human educational systems, improve as much as possible in a universal way the lot of every human being. Try to move things around externally and allow for as much of a good life as possible that could possibly result therefrom. Do not mistake this as being some inconsequential item, because it really is fundamental to the problems that the world faces. Because unbeknownst to the world, there are the scales of karma, there are prices to be paid for human behavior patterns. And if the thought is that there are no consequences, if the thought is that we can preserve and continue on with the status quo, the way that we are going indefinitely, history has shown, nature has shown that the great cosmic law does not permit such a stalemate in the grand scheme of life. And whereas the change that occurs when God and nature take their hand appears very strenuous, it is ultimately the most merciful path, for otherwise you would have an almost incessant, indefinite perpetuation of the mortal condition, of human mortality, of human institutions. This is of keen interest to all Ascended Master students, to all who are part of the greater fabric of our world, because to a greater or lesser degree, we are all tied into those world conditions. That very situation then is something that has been established in the world order. The idea that the way that human beings are is the way that they will always be, the way that they were either created by God or have developed through some evolutionary process. Abandoning this field then removes any sense, really and ultimately, of individual accountability or responsibility, whereby society or government holds the individual or lays at the feet of every individual the ultimate responsibility for their lot in life. And there are from time to time, both in interpersonal relationships as well in larger institutions, there is an erroneous sense of how it is possible to help an individual and to sustain them or to sustain millions of life streams according to some artificially superimposed enforcement of some sort of help. We are going to come back to this issue momentarily because it really does apply in a very personal way to each and every one of you as well. First, let us hasten to reassure the students of the light of the great compassion that is present in the heart of God, and thus is present in the heart of all of those who are the ascended ones of that divine, mighty I Am presence. In addition to this compassion, there is the ability for the Ascended Masters, with the power of Christ's discrimination and of the all-seeing eye, to observe the stream of the heart of the indwelling God self, struggling through the heart flame that is encased round about by the four lower bodies. They are able to observe that blessed incarnate Lamb of God, that blessed threefold flame, striving to outpicture more and more of the great and glorious God presence. Be assured that wherever such a heart flame is striving to be more of its own mighty I am presence, that there every slightest little secretly whispered prayer is heard and borne aloft directly to the ears of those ascended ones and angelic beings for whom it is possible to make a difference in that unspoken, whispered prayer of the heart. So the ascended masters do have the greatest of compassion for that indwelling God self. And when our beloved Saint Germain and the goddess of liberty, beloved Nada of the Ruby Ray and others of the ascended masters, when they sought to bring forth the modern 19th, 20th century democracies far and wide across the face of the earth, it was in an attempt to liberate those heart flames from whatever forms of external slavery and bondage, economic, political, social, and otherwise, that would have tamped down that heart flame and have sought to suffocate its flames from rising and billowing and expressing more and more of the divine presence. So democracies were originally envisioned by the ascended masters as a means whereby the promptings of the Christ selves, of those in embodiment, could give voice to that Christ discrimination of that heart flame, and where the importance of individuality, the importance of the individual life stream could be stressed, and that freedom found that would allow for the types of expression that would eventually lay the foundation for a golden age renaissance, wherein the glories of the God individualized mighty I am presence might flourish and bring forth an entire nation, or nations, if you will, of noble, illumined life streams, each one bearing the mantle of their own mighty presence, walking in the grace, the dignity, and the virtues of the Christ, of their own beloved mighty I am presence. Now, this is still, to this very day, the intent of modern democracies, that such life streams be enabled to have that freedom of expression as we enjoy here today, and you are enjoying wherever you might be at present, entering into this service. However, there are things that are occurring on the world scene that use some of the same languaging that has been born of the heart of beloved Saint Germain, use the same words, as it were, but with an opposite effect. For example, one of the things that is well acknowledged by the ascended masters as part of the path to the ascension is that if a life stream is going to pass the strenuous initiations that lead to their victory, they are going to need all of the life that flows along the current of their crystal cord. That is, that life be preserved in purity, that it not be wasted, that it not be stripped away, that it be preserved in its initial impetus of the sacred fire, contained within the electronic circle of the individual, that light and energy and life of the crystal cord build up and build up and build up year after year after year after year. Banked there close to the little point of the heart flame that is an expression of the fire of the great central sun, polarized to that love of the presence that is the heart of the threefold flame in embodiment. All of this light going forth in answer to the divine decree of the embodied life stream to perform its perfect work, and then to swiftly return and take up its station close at hand in polarity with the embodied life stream. When then you think of an initiate, such as the Mahatmas of our theosophical era, when you think of such great ones as Pythagoras, Jesus before his ascension, Lord Gautama before his ascension, you think of these beings in the prime of life. You think of them self-contained, self-poised, possessed of all of the charge of the sacred fire that is needed for them to accomplish their divine plan. This, likewise, the great law recognizes is most necessary for each and every one of you, that you have that conservation of the sacred fire, conserving all of that light in each of your four lower bodies, not allowing it to be usurped, most especially not allowing it to be usurped by your own mortal, untransmuted thought and feeling. For that mortal aspect of your own prior creation is really and truly much like a vampire activity that would drain off the vital life forces that are needed and necessary to be accumulated for the victory. Unless such an open drain of the light by one's own mortal self be sealed and transmuted, permanent, lasting progress would have to be postponed so long as that drain continued to exist. We behold then in the visage of the ascended masters and in the visage of our own beloved mighty I Am presence, we behold there not the slightest human sympathy for the mortal part of any human being, a sympathy that would perpetuate its quasi-existence, a sympathy that would cry crocodile tears because the appetites of the outer human self are no longer being fed, a sympathy that would, due to the sometimes crying portrayal by that outer self, would actually, if it were to be agreed with, perpetuate the very thing that is not wanted. This might seem like so many words to many of you, but to tell you the honest truth, the history of your embodiments on this earth, when the time comes that you are going to read the history of all of your previous embodiments, you will observe that in those embodiments, there did come a time when, with the wisdom of your Christ presence and the love of your mighty I Am presence, the determination was made that that presence, on balance, was no longer able to advance its divine purposes by sustaining a given embodiment any further. That all that was good that could be accomplished was accomplished, and that a further perpetuation of human life would serve little or no divine purpose whatsoever. And then you would see something astonishing take place. For you would watch as your beloved mighty I Am presence summoned its own heart flame home without the slightest bit of sympathy for the chapter of the personality that was concluding. No more than when springtime comes, you hang up your winter overcoat, putting it away for a season, hopefully not too nostalgically, wistfully looking at that and having too much human nostalgia about it, but simply discarding something that had outworn its usefulness. And this is, in fact, the case with the dispassion of your own beloved mighty I Am presence. That your presence is the one who is the authority for your life stream. The story of your life is the story of the Godhead charioteer that your mighty I Am presence is, and that you are, and that your heart is in all truthfulness. And until such time as the embodiment arrives when you can win your ascension, and therefore remaining in embodiment until that sequence of factors can all come into alignment of balancing karma, of blazing forth the resurrection flame and the caduceus action of the sacred fire upon the spinal altar, of having the identification so much with the presence that it has been stripped away from the human self. Until that embodiment occurs, it is with a very dispassionate aplomb that the mighty presence chooses to withdraw the heart flame and abide for a time until it is time for the next embodiment to occur. Why does this occur? That is the crux of one of the major points that the Ascended Masters are bringing to your attention this day. The point being that God will not long suffer the pure light and life of the individual crystal cord energy or the great outflowing tide of life and light that comes forth from the heart of the central sun and the sun of even pressure within the center of the earth. The great cosmic law will not forever countenance the perpetual usurpation of that life and light for the mere perpetuation of mortal conditions. And as we have cited before, some of the masters who are most known for their compassion, such as our beloved Saint Germain and our beloved Nada of the Sixth Ray Administration and Service and of the Ruby Ray, have been the ones to delineate very clearly between divine compassion, that is to say, love for the embodied heart flame and the full identity of the God self that is real, and sympathy for the unreal, misqualified energy of one's own life stream or any other form of such misqualification on the part of any other particular life stream or life streams in the aggregate. For wherever there is that perpetuation in the aggregate, two things occur which are of keen total awareness on the part of the Ascended Masters. What occurs is that the blessed life and light of the mighty presence that descends down the crystal cord, activating and vitalizing the four lower bodies and producing the abundant life in the experience life of an individual, producing the abundance in whatever discretionary power of abundance in this earthly plane they have, that is, on the one hand, stripped from that life stream unlawfully in a way that does not permit them to advance the cause of freedom for themselves and others. And likewise, one of the other most uncanny aspects of this very same law, one that no life stream may consider that they may disregard with impunity. And that is where there is that light that is afforded to unreality for the enabling of that unreality and the perpetuation of that unreality. And there is no illumination that is brought to another. There is no opportunity for them to transform into their own God identity. Then there is a karmic tie, a limitation that is instantaneously established in the life stream of the one who flaunts the cosmic law and affords them that life and light without the possibility of advancement. Here is how your own master, beloved Saint Germain, has spelled out this principle in terms of the sixth ray of ministration and service, speaking of the affording of service or life and light to another part of life. The blessing of divine service is a great privilege. But remember always, as your first service, and that the greatest service which you can possibly render is the complete acknowledgement and acceptance of your own beloved mighty I Am presence, the light within and above you. Many people consider various things to be service, which in reality are not service at all, but are slavery, mere slavery to the human creation of themselves or of others. Wherever, for example, you find the performance of physical acts for the gratification and the satisfying of the limitations of the human self alone, that is never service. It never was, nor will it ever be. It is, on the other hand, the definition of slavery to human creation, and it is an endless, vain treadmill of mankind's limitations. Clear your minds once and for all times, then, of the idea, of that idea, as a concept of service. Slavery and the treadmill of mankind's human limitations. This indeed is one of the things that occurs when there is no stress that is placed upon individual, the individual striving to exhibit for themselves the virtues of the Christ. Every life stream, then, may be afforded help lawfully and without making fresh karmic limitations, where that life stream receives that assistance as an opportunity for them to take responsibility for their own lives. Responsibility being the first of the 5 secret rays. Of course, it is responsibility as well for everyone else. However, it must be a responsibility that is lawfully facilitated, lawfully permissible, one that will work. And here you see a very powerful law that is being explained between human sympathy and divine compassion. So every life stream who receives assistance needs to take a great measure of responsibility for themselves and for others. Similarly, the second of the 5 secret rays, which we have taken to be authority, is also on that second secret ray simultaneously authority and obedience. The power to command is always balanced by the capacity to obey, and the recognition on this second secret ray that there is a hierarchical structure to reality. This means that on this second secret ray, we acknowledge that we are not a law unto ourselves. We recognize that there is a hierarchy and a structure to life that extends beyond human opinion and human condition. This fits in, this second secret ray fits in the individual with all of the hierarchy reaching back to the heart of the great central sun and all of the understanding that all of life is truly one. How does this apply in our modern 21st century world? It applies in the sense that at present, somehow or another, the lie has been perpetuated that whatever a simple majority of human beings decide is not only the law of the land, but represents the highest and best assessment of reality. And it seems to imply that if the majority elects to flaunt the laws of God, that means that should be the law of the land. It seems to imply that there should be no consideration for the fact that there is an autonomous standard of right and wrong, that there are some things in life that are right and other things that are wrong, regardless of what the majority of people may say about it. And that we can, if we choose to vote in some things as being wrong, that since we have voted them in, that is the final word on the matter. And of course, down through the millennium of mortal history, we have many examples of where mankind in the collective have made these determinations, but they have come up against God in nature. They have come up against the repercussions, simply because you pass a law that says some things are okay and other things are not okay does not change the great cosmic law one iota. The great cosmic law is the same as well. And so the second secret ray must apply to individuals. You see, we here enjoy our freedoms, not because we have karmically merited those freedoms. We enjoy our freedoms as a grace and a mercy of the great law. They were given to us by the ascended masters as a renewed opportunity. A great price was paid by beloved Saint Germain and others of the ascended masters when the modern democracies were first established as an example here in America. Even then, they were not really something that had been karmically merited by those original those original settlers in the 13 colonies. They were something that behind the scenes, Saint Germain and others of the ascended masters strove mightily and paid a very dear price, in addition to the price that the early American patriots paid, in order that there might be a grace and an opportunity of self-determination and freedom, and the other freedoms, such as those that were included in our Bill of Rights and so forth, and in our Constitution, and have since been afforded various places around the globe. Those things are still things that we enjoy by the grace of God, by the mercy of the Lords of Karma, not because of our mortal human righteous karma. And they must be enjoyed within a boundary of the divine design. And if they are not, this, of course, becomes the great question that we go back to of that original balance scales that is always being held by the ascended masters, weighing the behavior of the multitudes, flaunting the Christ virtues, versus what is best for those precious heart flames that are striving to outpicture the light of their beloved mighty I Am presence. The thing that the ascended masters know is that the pattern of history has always been that those who are productive, those who take responsibility and generate the abundant life thanks to their own clean use of the life forces, their own desire to be creative and productive in life, that ultimately, when their ability to sustain that ascended master way of life in their surroundings is stripped from them in the name of that which is called service, but is really slavery to the perpetuation of the outer behavior that has nothing to do with the Christ, that then you have yet one more factor in the nay column that weighs in the balance of how the ascended masters are going to accomplish their great work for humanity. So, although it be a voice crying in the wilderness, a voice that is heard but by a very few, yet as in the time of the Old Testament prophets, still there is the karmic record set as the ascended masters do speak to the world and say to all of the peoples of the world, God is not mocked. There is a cosmic law. There are right and wrong. And there must be a reformation and a transformation of the character, the personality of individual life streams. It is not enough to perpetuate the status quo of outer selfhood. There must be change and transformation, and this is possible because of the divine seed of the mighty I Am presence that is within the individual. The nature of man is entirely different from that which the world's religions have preached. It is entirely different from what the scientists of the modern world would preach. It is entirely different from what the human imagination can ever conceive. The nature of man is defined by the mind of God, by the creative impulse that fashioned man in his inward parts in the heart of the great silence in the beginning. The nature of man's true identity is the truth that was envisioned of the ekedeos, of the God realized man and woman rising into their co-creative identity as divine and transcendent beings, leaving behind for all eternity finite limitations of time and space, as well as all of the mortal, mistaken identity patterns of the outer self. This is our joy as torchbearers of the temple, to hold on high a new standard of defining the nature of what an individual is, defining the individual in accordance with the blueprint of identity that is found within the electronic body, and holding forth for all mankind the opportunity to embrace that divine image, to recognize that fundamental bedrock transformation and change in your nature can occur. We will leave you with this one comforting realization on the part of the ascended masters. And it should be of the greatest comfort to each and every one of you who are on the path and who may be more painfully aware of your own outer failures and limitations than you would like to admit. It should be a great comfort to all of you who have actually wondered whether or not you would ever actually change your selfhood and your identity, if you would ever actually complete the course and win your victory. I'm sure that from time to time, you may have looked upon the example of some who have passed through the halls of the Ascended Masters' activities. And you have seen how certain life streams began with such a flourish of great promise, going up like a 4th of July rocket, bursting into a great kaleidoscope of light and flash and flame and dazzling illumination, but far too many times sputtering out and removing themselves in time from the path. And you may have wondered, well, is the problem in the path? Is the problem in the individual? Is the problem with the program? What is the problem? I can tell you that we ourselves have taken counsel and received such wise counsel with the Ascended Masters, amongst them our own beloved El Morya. And when we posed a similar sort of question to them as to why opportunity would be afforded to certain individuals to engage close in association with the work of this or other Ascended Masters, there was the most profound answer given by beloved El Morya in connection with the path that each and every one of you are on, this glorious path of the ascension, which in this instance he did term as the probationary path. And he explained, as others of the Ascended Masters have done before, that they, the Ascended Masters, they do not cast your horoscopes. They do not unnecessarily try to read the record of your past embodiments and glean from them or extrapolate from them a probability curve of whether or not you are going to succeed this time. It is true that when it comes to certain missions in the affirmative, there is a reading of the record of the causal body and a determination that a given life stream can carry the mantle and the weight of a certain mission, but there is not a prognostication or an attempt on the part of the ascended masters to predict the behavior of outer individuals, except to say that the probationary path offers an opportunity for victory. And El Morya said in no uncertain terms that the probationary path is there because they know, and the record is clear, that an individual who picks themselves up, having made a mistake and moves on in the path, that they might go through a certain course of service and then fail, but they will go through that course of service and they could just as easily succeed. And the record is clear that at some point, you are going to be victorious. You are going to succeed. And it is because of the certain knowledge that you are going to succeed ultimately that the path remains open for you, because there is the absolute assurance that as God is working his purposes out, that the time is going to come when you are going to pass all of your initiations and you are going to move forward into that ultimate victory of the ascension. I'm not quite sure if you quite grasp the importance of that. It means that if you failed 49 times, on the 50th time, you would succeed. It's why Jesus said you forgive 7 times 7. You continue to forgive and you continue to afford opportunity. It means that, in other words, if it were never going to happen, there would not be the path. There would just be the closed book. And the chapter of an individual's life stream would be over. But it is not that way, because the masters know that it is going to be victorious. And that means that you should also take heart and know that your presence within you is going to bring about that ultimate victory. And that means that the mortal outer self and identity is going to be changed, fundamentally and irrevocably transformed from finite limitation into infinite and transcendent God freedom, into the ascended master state. And it is the call and the summoning and the upholding of that challenge hurled before the mankind of earth. Come up higher. Come into this transformation. Take up the Christ virtues as a burden. Take responsibility for your life. Take responsibility for your own initiative. Take responsibility for the consequences of your life. Don't lay it off onto blaming someone else in your life. Don't blame your government. Don't make your government or anyone else the sugar daddy that is going to have to make everything right in your life that is not in accordance with cosmic law. Take that responsibility. Find the capacity within you to come into alignment with hierarchy and the obedience to cosmic law, then to be vested with the capacity or the authority to fulfill your mission. Learn to give of that ultimate self-sacrifice of love, not in the perpetuation of mortal consciousness, but in service of the heart flame, in sacrifice to the heart flames of others, so that they might rise into their own victory. Hold to that with that relentless necessity of cosmic law and the constancy of cosmic law until it comes forth into manifestation. Out of all of this, you may reduce all of this to a very simple message, that what is the most needed at this time in the world is for the multitudes of mankind to embrace a higher way of life for their own identities, for their own selfhood, their own character, that they actually consider the need, the imperative need, and the wherewithal within their God presence to expand that presence within them and to transform the outer behavior patterns until they come into alignment with the glorious God presence. This is such a supreme gift which the students of the Ascended Masters have to offer to all mankind. Because we do not preach that you would do it by simply dint of mortal effort, but we understand that it is done by the expansion of the light of the mighty I Am presence that is already the truth of each individual, that simply needs to be itself freed of the shackles of the mortal consciousness that surround it and to rise into the victory of its own ascension.